You're listening to the all-new KBLU radio network. That's the Blue Raven Network. Often duplicated, but never replicated. You're listening to the all-new KBLU radio network. That's the Blue Raven Network.
Often duplicated, never replicated. You're listening to the all-new KBLU radio network, Blue Raven Network.
The world of 1916 was complex, or the world of 1945 was complex. The world of 2016 is intensely complex. You'll be dealing with terrorists. You'll be dealing with hybrid armies. You'll be dealing with little green men. You're going to be dealing with tribes. You'll be dealing with national leaders and local leaders. You'll be dealing with politics and economics. You'll be dealing with direct fire and indirect fire. And you're going to be dealing with it all. And it's all going to be dealt with simultaneously.
Hopefully we've got everything straightened out that we can move forth without any issues. I want to thank MIXLR for jumping on board very quickly and making some adjustments in their software. It was a little tweaking here and there, and hopefully the version that they have now is not going to be locking up my computer. And if it does, I guess we'll have to start back at ground zero. So again, I want to thank MIXLR for just doing the best they can in the short time that they had. All right. Hopefully, again, with everything that I've done in a short period of time has finally come together, that I'll be able to get back on the phones and start ministering again, start answering your emails, and doing the job that I've been called to do many years ago. It is interesting, the phone calls that I was able to do yesterday. I've been asked to do some shows. I'm going to talk more about that when I get some more definition of the times. We've got one set towards the end of the month. I've got a couple of guests that I want to bring on for next week. Hopefully we can get them on, and I'll announce that on Monday to go into more depth. And for those who have sent me an email in the past 24 hours, I haven't had a chance to get to them yet. I'll do those tonight or tomorrow. This weekend is going to be more of a chill-out time for me. You know, I did the best what I could in a very short period of time, and I'm kind of wore out. So I want to just take it easy. But at least the environment that I have here is very beautiful. I took some pictures of the common area that's outside my office that I think is going to be very appealing for those who are stressed out and want to come to be ministered to. And I'm going to post those pictures that I've taken. I'll put them on Tinfoil Hat Club, and I'll leave a link on that so you can go to them and get an idea of the change that I've done here. I was able to do pretty much a parallel move, which was was definitely a plus in the direction of dealing with this. Now, the other issue is that the web or the internet provider, unfortunately, in my opinion, they're not giving me what I want. I'm going to see what I can do on the video end of it Right now, I am simulcasting both on Blog Talk and MIXLR. Hopefully, the bandwidth is handling that just fine. And if there's enough room there, then in time, I'll include that with YouTube Red, which is the live stream. And we'll just see how that goes. Either way, I can always do the YouTubes by themselves. They're a little more intricate. I can show pictures. I can give a little better definition of the things. Now, before I go any further, I want to thank those who have been supporting me. It's been that's been able to get me in this facility, and I want to be able to maintain this facility. There's a lot of stuff coming. I've got a lot of information of this come in the past 24 hours. I've kind of touched on some of them. I want to address one of them towards the end. That's the entity that was seen in Phoenix. I've got some ideas about what's going on there and its relation to CERN. And, of course, the other thing, too, is this, just a false picture that was given out where there looks like there's some kind of a fallen angel. And I also want to address, as I've been trying to do, with the definition of fallen angel, those of reptilians versus demons, that somehow they're being all mixed together and they're quite different. And so the understanding, being able to define one from another is very important in your spiritual warfare, because as you speak and in your definition and the stance, the understanding, the power, and the knowledge that you have, your discernment is another way of saying resist the devil and he will flee, because the devil is a liar. And so if he can deceive you and you're not sure in your footing, how many of you have rock hopped, gone down to a stream, did a little mountain climbing, and you were very uneasy, in your steps? And I've been there. The search and rescue I did for years, there were situations that were very trying, that, if you made a mistake, you were going to be the one that was going to have to be rescued. And that was one of the main things that we tried to train in those new people coming in. Don't be the victim if you're supposed to be the rescuer. And in reality, I guess that's going to play a part of what I'm going to talk about tonight, because the adaptation, otherwise bringing yourself into a environment that you feel comfortable in, or that you can thrive in or survive in, does not necessarily mean this is what God has for you or this was your calling. It doesn't mean that you're safe if you're being controlled, and as long as you are controlled, then you're not a threat to the opposition. You're not a threat to the enemy. So if you've had to sell yourself out, if you've had to adapt, then you are part of the matrix. And in that matrix, you are controlled. You're in a, whether you're surreal, whether you're in reality, whether you're in some, environment that is nothing but deception, like the movie The Matrix, how it was showing how there were separate layers, which in reality was the dimensions. Now, even Chuck Missler, who was local here in Coeur d'Alene, when I first moved here in 2008, I was going to his Bible studies every night on Tuesday, and that was the ones that he videotaped that now, if you join his group, the Koinonia House, that's part of the teachings. When you see those, most likely I'm there. But the point of it is that he himself had come to an understanding that things were digital. Things were a matrix. The perception, the making, the controlling, whether it's plasma, whether it is, a type of energy that is in a digital form, whether it's in analog form, whatever the circumstances in, it's a controlled environment. And in that control, whatever the mode is, whether it's analog or digital, comes from a divine power. And just like any software, let's say like MIXLR, when they developed it, it would work on certain computers. But I've got new computers. There's nothing wrong here with these. These are state of the art. I've got quads, I've got a lot of memory, I've got video cards to crunch the numbers on all the video, but yet there was something wrong. And so what it is there's a corruption. Something comes in and corrupts the software. The original designer who sat and coded it out someone else comes along and alters it. And so just like pulling one spark plug off of your car engine, let's say you have an 8-cylinder, now you're only firing on 7, it's going to be imbalanced. It's not going to be efficient. You're not going to have the horsepower. You're not going to have the gas mileage. You're not going to have the acceleration. There's something wrong. Well, this is what I'm talking about. We're adapting into a matrix that is not of God's doing. This is of Lucifer. This is the beast system. This is the end time. And the question is whether you have sold yourself out or you're deceived yourself. And many of you that are under oppression from demonic, satanic ritually abused, trauma-based mind control, just life in itself, depending on how your situation is. Maybe you're in a bad marriage. Maybe you are on drugs. You're an alcoholic. You have curses on you. Whatever the circumstances are, these things that are negative do not come from God. Now, God is in control, and it's through our obedience, through our understanding of who's in control and who can do what, that gives us this ability for the discernment. I'm going to shut one of these off here just in case there's a slight feedback. I forgot to check that out. In any case, the circumstance in our environment is able to be controlled by us, by our obedience, by our dedication, by the understanding of who we are, who made us, who put us in control, and what our task is at hand. How many of you have taken on a job that was over your head, but you stayed to the course, you did the best you can, and then eventually you learned something you didn't think you could learn, and then it turns out you're actually pretty good at it. Now, unfortunately, many of the jobs I've had in the past, it turns out I stink at it, right? You ever heard of the Peter principle? Where, let's say, someone's hired to sweep the floor, and it turns out he's a darn good floor sweeper. He's a son of a gun when it comes to the broom on the floor. And so they make him the head floor sweeper. Well, he does such a good job at that, they make him a supervisor over maintenance. And he does such a good job at that, they decide to bring him into a salesman position because he's reliable. He's able to do everything that, they've asked him to do. And so they thought after a period of time they would give him a chance. And so he goes into sales, and here it turns out he's actually a pretty good salesman. Well, after a while, he becomes the head salesman and then becomes the manager over sales. Well, now he's got a chance, coming up higher on the corporate ladder. And so they bring him into management of the business itself. And here it turns out he sucks at it. He's not any good at it. And so they fire him. Well, that's the Peter principle. That's when you take a situation, you keep molding it, you keep bringing it up to a level, and when it doesn't achieve the last level that you've brought it to, you discard it. When in fact it has its worth, it has the ability to offer to a company, to an individual, to a relationship, to a circumstance, but yet you discard it because at the moment in time it doesn't do what you want. Now, I did an interview a couple months ago, and in that I found out that the woman that I was interviewing was actually in a relationship at one time with a man who had authored the book, Pulling Your Own Strings. Now, that book changed my life back in the early 90s. Now, that was a book that was recommended to law enforcement, those who were coming out of the academy, that in the environment around that they were going to be exposed to, there is a manipulation and a control by those people who are career criminals, those who are violent criminals, those who are antisocial. And so by understanding that you're actually the one that pulls your own strings and not allowing someone else to pull your strings, you maintain control. So let's say that you go into a store and it's the only store that offers this product at the price that you want, but it's busy. The clerk behind the counter, in fact, one of the chapters in that book was clerks or jerks. that you can take anybody and put them behind the counter and they can be the most wonderful person and then they turn into the most horrible person. But the point of it is the environment is too chaotic for you. You're not getting, the service. You get upset with the person behind the counter and you leave, thinking that you've done them a harm. But in reality, you've done yourself harm because of your lack of patience, your lack of ability to address the situation. You left out of the establishment without what you went in for. So in reality, you victimized yourself. And that really makes a lot of sense. And I've had to, over the years, look at my situations in my life the very same way, that I've had to take that deep breath, take a step back, and try and understand, is this a demonic situation that's causing me to overreact, to adapt differently to a situation than what God had intended? Okay? It's one of the reasons we're called to be understanding. It's one of the reasons to be loving to each other. And, of course, Jesus has to tell us that. Just like Jesus tells men, husbands, love your wives. Jesus tells women, not respect, but actually reverence. Some of the translations say respect, but it's actually reverence, meaning that they have, there's an order of things, and regardless of what some of the understandings of how Scripture has been altered or changed, there is still a structure. And in that structure is God's order. And when you're out of order, you're not in God's order. Okay, God is a God of order, not a God of disorder. And if it's in disorder, then someone else is in control. So anytime that you come out of that order, then you fall into a matrix, you fall into an environment that is unhealthy to you, that is not going to be prosperous. It's not going to give you a throughput of repeatability. What I mean by that is, if anyone's been in production, you can have a production line and you're going to have a bunch of people make these products, but is it going to be, if you held two side by side, are they going to look the same? Are they going to operate the same? Are they going to be functional? Is the repeatability and quality control standards high enough that anything that comes off the line, no matter who makes it, no matter who handles it, is it going to meet the grade? Is it going to be operable when it gets in the hands of the consumer? So what you're doing in life, is it going to be operable? Is it going to bring worth to people? Or are you virtually victimizing yourself? So it's what I've had to do. I've had to take a step back. You can get frustrated. By the way, ladies, men's anger comes from frustration. They've tried to do this, they've tried to do that, or they don't believe that they can do it, and they don't have confidence in the self, which we can go back to, quote, a mom factor or a father factor, meaning that spoken curses have been placed over them that they'll never amount to anything. So it's important to be supportive. So when we have reverence, so when women have reverence for their husbands, they have a loving understanding to be giving them the room for error, and in hopes and in love that they can come back to the center and then be correct. So anytime that you try and control somebody, it's a form of witchcraft. And so adaptation into a matrix is a form of witchcraft. It's a form of social control, social engineering, causing people to do things they normally wouldn't do. Now, we all have a spirit in us. We all have a knowledge of God. The question is, were you given an eraser and start erasing the imprint that was put into you, the DNA, the so-called biblical matrix of who God is? Now, matrix in itself, in its definition, comes in many ways. Mathematicians in the 1800s took the term matrix, which comes out of Greek, which also means an animal's womb giving birth. And then it was transformed into mathematics. So it has a very diverse meaning. And so who's ever in control of the words, whoever uses the meaning is how it's going to be played. And of course, again, we know matrix has those things of deception, of lies, of an environment, Are we in truth? Are we surrounded by something that is controlling us where we believe it's truth? We believe it is knowledge. We believe it is something that is beneficial to us when in reality it's not. Let's look at it this way. I've got a lot here, and I don't know if I'm going to follow it or not. Let's say that there really is a roundup, and there are people taken to FEMA camps, concentration camps, rehabilitation, re-education, whatever you want to call it. Now, a lot of the movies that have come out are giving us that example. And so over time, human nature is that men and women come together and women become pregnant and they bear children. So now you have a child who's born in the environment of incarceration, because that's really what it is. And as they grow up, this is all that they know. So their matrix is a false reality of being free. They didn't know what freedom was. They only know their life with oppression, and in reality, a percentage of them actually adapt to the matrix of oppression. So the question is that has society over time gotten to the point that we have accepted being captured? We've accepted our slavery? Well, the answer is yes. Because this country, as I did the teaching on Freemason curses, the way that it was established out of God's will. It was automatically, systematically placed in bondage through curses, through the abomination, through the disobedience of God's word. Because you cannot serve two masters. And any time that you go towards Baphomet, you go towards the occult, you go towards divination, you're getting further and further away from the Holy Spirit. You're getting further away from the truth. You're getting further away from God. Now, this is why Jesus came to us. Jesus came to bring truth to a lie, to bring us out of bondage, to bring us into freedom, that we can come back into, quote, relationship with God, because we were cast out because of our disobedience. And in that disobedience, we were under a curse of the garden. We're cursed to till the ground. We're cursed that we have thorns and thickets. The women are cursed with birth pains. We have all of these things that were never the intent of God originally. In an order, then there has to be the trial in knowledge to know the difference between right and wrong. So though we may wonder why God did all this, then in reality, that if we're to spend eternity with Him, then we now have a taste of what is wrong, and we willfully choose what is right. Do you understand? So that's one of the big differences here. So regardless of your matrix, regardless of your surroundings, what you've had to adapt to, what you want in life is to be able to choose rightfully between right and wrong, and a confidence within your spirit that you've made the right choice regardless of your environment. Now, those who have personality disorders, now let me define that. Now, again, I'm not a psychologist. I am not trying to circumvent anything that the DSM-5 or DSM-4 or any other thing that has been written out there. But what I have seen is when an individual has been abused, has been neglected, has been rejected, has been abandoned, has been betrayed, there's a damage that takes place within their spirit. And none of us want to feel pain. We avoid pain at any cost. And so because of that environment, because of that pain, then we'll do whatever it takes to avoid the pain. Now, this is one of the reasons why people who are hurt people. There'll be a lashing out to protect yourself. We put a shield around us, and we've closed off our heart. We've guarded our heart to a point that we no longer feel. In fact, many people will strike out trying to push other people's buttons. Whether they want a negative or a positive reaction, they're at least getting a reaction that they feel something. Now, people with post-traumatic stress can be under the same circumstances. All right, getting back to personalities. Whenever you have a, quote, personality disorder, then what we're doing is we're taking what is normal, what is common, and redefining it that it does not meet that criteria. Now, we could look at personalities in different countries. We could look at different environments, and we'll see that the way people when in Rome, do as the Romans do, right? So what is acceptable in one social environment may not be acceptable in another social environment. And so would we say that people in other countries have a personality disorder? Well, this is why it is so important to default back to God's Word. Do not let man define what is right and wrong. This is why I have a problem with psychology. Now, we are creatures of habit. We are repeatable. We are able to have an estimate on how people will react when we have a cause and effect. But the point of it is that because of the hurts and the wounds and the curses and the demonic influences, is a person really reacting who they are? Well, I say no. And I say no because of the experience that I've had over all these years and the research that I've done, and seeing the contrast between a person who's hurt and wounded, how they react. So otherwise, their reaction is based on the offense. What offends them? What hurts them? What scares them? What puts them at odds to a situation that a fight or flight is activated, that causes them to project back, otherwise throw something back. So if you have hurts and wounds, you're going to protect yourself. If you have demonic fear, you're going to be acting in the fear. Now, fear can bring anger, and the suppression of anger can be one cause for depression. Now, there are spirits that are depressive spirits. There are spirits that are anxiety. There are spirits that are of different entities, that they act out their ugly nature from A to Z. So you can have somebody that has all the symptoms of mental illness, or you can have someone that is so euphoric that nothing could ever change them. So you have two extremes, and in reality, none of them are going to be beneficial to themselves on the long run or beneficial to society. So I have to drum everything up to one point, and that is that it is a oppression, a matrix to force you into adaptation, to adapt to an environment that is not for your benefit. It is for the benefit of the demonic. So it's a way of controlling. It's a way of implementing you into an environment that is beneficial to them. All right? Now, when it comes to personality disorders, there can be those that may have chemical disorders, or you can have those that are referred to as hardwired. Now, when we say hardwired, then what I'll refer that to is a trauma-based type of mind control. Those who deal with satanic ritual abuse know that through abuse, through trauma, there's a fracturing of the mind. So a personality can be split. And so you can have multiples, you can have alters, you can have identity disassociation disorders, as it's referred to. And they can pop up. We can have one in 1 minute. There can be a blinking of the eyes, a defined blinking. Always watch this now. If you're with somebody and you've wondered why 1 minute they're this way and 1 minute they're the next, watch their eyes. They'll do a defined blink. It's almost like a reset button. And they'll close their eyes like a long blink, and when they open it up again, you've got somebody different. That's one way to define that you're dealing with a multiple personality. You're dealing with an alter. You're dealing with a personality disorder, okay? So in that means that you are no longer who God intended you to be. Doesn't mean that you're in error. Doesn't mean that you're going to be judged and sent to hell. That's not what I'm saying. There's a definition here of the understanding that Lucifer and all the demonic is trying to keep you from being who God intended you to be while on this earth. Do you see the difference there? Big difference. So again, when we understand matrix, we can understand a calculation or dimensional assembly. And in that dimensional assembly, there can be a z-axis, there can be a y-axis, there can be anything other. Let's say helical. Helical is a term meaning that it's like a spring. It's a circle. So instead of a straight plane, you can have something that turns in a circle. Whatever the circumstances are, does it control you? Or are you in control of the environment? And of course, what my main task is to break all these curses, to get your wounds healed, to get you back into relationship with God, that you can hear from God and not hear from the demonic influences. And while you're hearing from God, then you're divinely guided to make the right decisions instead of decisions based on cause and effect, which never have a good outcome. They may seem like they work for the moment, but in reality, on the long term, they bring harm. They bring a environment that is going to be toxic over time. All right? Now, one of the things about the demonic is I was talking to somebody the other day, is there's now the world of the demonic has become even more complicated. And what I mean by that is now there is a synthetic influence that is replicating demonic activity. So otherwise, we have mind control, we have those things of psychotronics, we have those things that are mimicking through artificial intelligence. If you haven't heard my teachings that are in regard to psychotronics, to the Montauk Project, to gang stalking, the personalities of them, those that have been brought into an environment that the only way they'll survive is to cooperate, otherwise they've adapted to their matrix or the matrix they've been encased in. And what happens is that many of the people, and I've said this before, and I'm going to keep saying it because I need everyone to understand that now that this environment has become more complicated, we need now to define whether it is a real demon or whether it is a synthetic demon, meaning that is through electronic means. It's through synthesizing. It's a form of radio technology to implant, to put in your mind, like schizophrenia, where you hear voices, you think there's something, you may hallucinate, you may actually think that you're hearing or seeing something that doesn't exist, but yet in your mind it is real. And so now we need to define that. And the problem that I'm seeing is that many of the people who really are dealing with demons, that since the church has not, helped them define them, that when they research and they look for the cause, and they stumble across gang stalking, they stumble across psychotronics and mind control, they immediately start blaming that on that. Now, again, as I've said before, it may be a combination of the two, and in reality, it mostly is, because so few people have been through deliverance, so few people have had the curses broke off of you, that you're still under that oppression. You're still under that curse. So I think that I'm probably one of the few right now that are addressing this, because either people are saying that it's one way or another. But you need to remember, the demonic is very, very sly. They're opportunists. They do whatever it takes to achieve their goal, and that is to destroy you. It also means that the individuals who are operating this equipment, the gang stalkers and so forth, that they are evil. Evil does what evil is. And so the nature of what they are is being now through different means, whether it's through physical, whether it's through electronic, or whether it's through spiritual. Now, gang stalking can also be referred to as a witch's coven who sends curses after you. Do you understand? Gang stalking means one or more people inflicting harm onto another in a sequential, timed, controlled agreed environment. So otherwise, a gang of individuals have come together, which would again have to do with conspiracy, conspiring to cause harm in you, just like demons conspire to cause harm to you. So with this understanding that in all these environments, it is very crucial now to distinguish what is what. So I can put this category over here, address it in that category, define another section. Okay, this is part of peeling the onion back, going back through different layers. And unfortunately, it has become much more complicated. And I wish that wasn't the case, because it's making that job very hard for people who are coming up through the realm or have been doing this for a while to comprehend that. I had a conversation today with an individual who I thought was understanding everything I was saying, and I came to the end of it, and it turned out that they didn't understand anything that I said. And then when I had given them advice, they thought that I was giving them advice that I was actually contradicting myself. And I didn't come to the understanding that they didn't understand until they had made a statement back to me. Why would you tell me this when you were telling me that? So deception, this lie that's out there, has caused us to be very confused. And if you're very confused, just like any attempt to become better at something, if you find out that it's not as easy as it is, you tend to give up. You know, let's say you buy a model airplane, or you want to weave something, or stitch something, or knit something that's very complicated, and you find out that it isn't as easy as you thought. It's so difficult that it's not fun anymore. It becomes frustrating, and so you either discard it, never come back to it again, or even destroy it. Okay, so here with this, let me get into constitution. Who are you? What is your strength? What is your power? What is your abilities? Where do you stand? Have you gone through deliverance? Have you had the curses broke off of you? Have you come to a point, regardless of the situation, that you're able to stand? You're able to deal with whatever is thrown your way and not take offense, not become so excitable that you're unable to address each situation as it comes. Okay? So have you been brainwashed? Has social engineering put you into a state that even when you see truth, this matrix that you're in, you're incapable of making your way out of it? Okay? Social engineering, the influences of media, even gang stalking and gaslighting, as we were talking about, by flying monkeys, even psychotronics by those who developed it, that I'm referring to as laughing hyenas, coming from fallen angel technology, all based in mind control, all based in trauma base. Now, again, we have chemtrails, the aerosol vapors that are implemented onto us can cause us to be sick, can even, it's like when I go over to Montana and I go to the hot springs, there's lithium in the water. And so in about 30 minutes, Calgon, take me away. Regardless of how stressed you are, you're now brought into a different state because your body absorbs this lithium and you chill out. But in the other sense, have you chilled out to the point that you no longer care about your environment? You no longer care that things are being done, that the injustice that's being done, you have no righteous indignation towards the evil. See, that's the other part of this matrix, this brainwashing. You've adapted to that level. A friend of mine used to say, water seeks its own level. Well, it's true. You pour water, it will go to its lowest point. Well, that's what evil is. Evil wants to drag you down to its level. Okay? We elevate ourselves in the name of Christ, through his blood, and only through him, that in it that we can rise above evil and look down onto it instead of looking up at it. If you've ever been in a situation where you've been knocked to the ground and you're looking up at your assailant, well, unless you know how to fight from the ground, that's not a real good place to be. there can be an intimidation factor. In fact, I understand that Lyndon Johnson in his office, that the chairs that when people would come in to counsel to, discuss the terms and situations, the chairs were intentionally made lower. So Johnson was actually looking down, and there was a psychological effect. And in this world, when we're being looked down on, it has a psychological effect. So you have worth, you are treasured, you are loved by the Most High God, and never forget that His hand is upon you, that He has a plan for you, has a purpose. It is no mistake that you were born in this time. And the question is, where are you? What is your constitution? Do you know who you are? All right? Are you being thrown to and fro? Are you double-minded? Have you sold yourself out? Are you constantly redefining yourself? A lot of people do that. A lot of people are seeking. A lot of people look for something that brings worth to them, something that seems to give them worth in life, meaning. All right, and in fact, relationships are like that. You may be seeking a relationship. There was an old saying, "Love is never having to say that you're sorry." Well, that's a huge lie. And that you're looking for your other half, or you're looking for someone to complete you. Well, that's all a lie. You must be complete first before you can truly love on to another. Because then it becomes a choice and not a necessity. And in your necessity, you can choke out something. You can suffocate it. You can be so needy that you literally suck the life out of other people. And unfortunately, that happens. So when you're constantly rediscovering yourself, you're constantly redefining yourself. And so that means you then are adapting to the matrix at that very moment. And at that moment, we can find ourselves codependent. We can also find ourselves as enablers. An enabler, I was an enabler at one time. I did not realize that I was. I wasn't in my nature, but in time, because of the abuse, because of the neglect, because of those things that were implemented over a period of time, that in order to keep the peace, I was willing to keep doing those things that were wrong, to keep a lie to the forefront, keeping deception as reality. I literally was lying to myself, being codependent, and in my codependency, becoming an enabler. This was enabling evil to prevail. Now, that's a serious situation, okay? Now, multiples, SRAs, alters, their survival is almost day to day, almost moment to moment. With the altering and moving back and forth of their personalities, and then or the core person coming out, they're having to adapt per their situation, per their moment. So they can be kind and loving one moment and absolutely a murderer the next. And you, as a somewhat normal individual, are trying to figure out what in the world is going on here. If you've been in a relationship like that, that eventually, because of the harm that's being done to you, because of the word curses, because of the spiritual implications, that you yourself become infected. You yourself become into a situation that is harmful to you, and you adapt. You become one that is then part of the matrix. So in your adapting, you're trying again to avoid pain, to avoid truth, right? And in truth, at first, truth brings pain, because then you come to the reality that things are incorrect, they're a lie. You've been betrayed, you've been lied to, you've been whatever, all right, manipulated. But in time, truth sets you free. So it's very important that regardless of your situation, that you base yourself in truth. But here's the problem. What is truth? Do you remember when Pontius Pilate asked Jesus, what is truth? And how ironic that, a human standing before God, questioning God, what is truth? That still floors me to this day. And there's a lot of meaning in that, and a lot of understanding of the ignorance of man not having the comprehension of God. That in reality, everlasting life, eternity, the ability to have the curses broken, the ability to be set free, was standing right there in front of Pontius Pilate, but yet he chose another road. All right? Now, the New World Order, the Illuminati, the Luciferian base control, keeps you from the truth, because in your truth you understand who they are. So your altering of your perception in a matrix, causing you to basically to forfeit your will, meaning that in your will you've sold yourself out, that your emotions then can become truth. Okay, you'll see this with those who I refer to, those that are liberal, meaning that instead of the understanding of truth, that they would rather, like a junkyard dog, stand against truth, because the truth in itself is so painful or so far from the comprehension that since truth does not bring them euphoria, truth does not bring some kind of altering peace within their spirit, because when you do have truth, it may mean there's a job to do. It may mean there's some work to do, and they don't want to go there because it means they have to change who they are. Hence, we get back to personality disorders. And in personality disorders, there's always a demonic influence. And I've mentioned before that what we can have with those who would think that Hillary is the best thing since popcorn, and that all the murders and all the killings and all the skeletons in the closet don't exist, that it's nothing more than a lie from the right, and all this other stuff is in itself a deception and a lie to the very soul of themselves, that they become their own worst enemy. Because in reality, none of that's going to work out. None of that is going to bring that into a place that is going to edify God. And if you're not edifying God, if you're not doing those things, then whether through a loving nudging of the hand to bring you into, or whether he takes you to the woodshed, the circumstances are you didn't need to go there in the first place. We learn from trial and error. We learn from our mistakes. Not everybody on the long term succeeds in that, but the point of it is that we've all been given that opportunity. We've all been given that opportunity to select truth, right? And in that truth, again, as I mentioned, it sets you free. Okay? So deep down in our spirit, we do know what's right or wrong because it's part of our DNA. It's a part of, if we are born from above, if we are of God's Spirit, then that Spirit has been placed into us. Again, as I mentioned, time like an eraser and searing your conscience, avoiding the truth, being disobedient, we take an eraser and we erase away all that truth. Anything that's been imprinted in us, we can wash it out. And that's a pretty serious predicament, okay? Now, is it from peer pressure? Is it from spouse domination, otherwise an abusive spouse, that keeps you in a position where, again, you keep the peace at any cost, and even though you know the truth, you circumvent the truth. And because of that, then in time, you believe the lie. And when you believe the lie, then you can be turned over to the lie. So many of you that are in bad relationships, you gave up who you are a long time ago, and you've lost yourself. And when that individual, if they leave you, and they normally do because they'll go cheat or do something else, you're absolutely devastated because the nucleus of your environment, which you've become adapted to, you've adapted to this matrix of lie deception, that even though it doesn't bring true joy or happiness to you, you're willing to have anything because you become so hardened, so nulled in your spirit that any emotion, good or bad, is that you're at least feeling some emotion. So this is why people can become addicted to a broken heart. You go out and destroy your own relationship. You can be your own worst enemy because you're feeling something. This is why people cut themselves. Cutters. It's a terrible situation. the pain that comes from cunning can override the internal pain that you're feeling. And that there's a gratification because you may feel so toxic about yourself and in your punishment, that punishment is then being exercised, and then there's actually a gratification from it. Now, does that come from God? Absolutely not. This again tells us the bondage that we're in, adapting to the matrix of the demonic. Now, of course, fear in itself keeps us in bondage, okay? Designed to keep you in slavery. Now, we're all slaves in this country. We pay taxes. We don't pay taxes, we lose our houses. We don't pay taxes, we go to prison. We don't pay taxes, we're fined. All right? The IRS, again, being under the New World Order, being that of the Federal Reserve, all of this stuff that was implemented years and years ago is to keep us in bondage. That our own money is given over to a bank that loans us back to us in interest. And so now we have debt. We have debt on our own money. Now, how does that work? Right? For instance, there was a woman that was a friend of the family, and she's recently passed, but she had lived in her house so long, she paid her house off. Well, that just doesn't seem to happen with a lot of houses, apparently. And so this a loan agency tried to talk her into taking a loan on her house. And she had been in there so long and become feeble-minded that she had forgotten all about paying off her house. And she had come just literally minutes away from signing documentation of signing a house over that had been paid for. And it happened to be that, obviously divinely directed, that a neighbor came over who had known the woman for 30 years and interceded. And so do you understand? There's always a constant oppression. There's always something that if you're not on your best, if you're not ready for whatever it is, the enemy comes to steal, kill, and destroy. Here's this woman pushing 90, would have gone back into a 30-year, and however that works, whatever the situation was, and of course she would have never seen the term of it, but the meaning that her family, her daughters and grandchildren would have inherited debt on a home that was free. So does that come from good? Of course not. That comes from being in bondage and slavery, and only the demonic has the narcissistic attitude to do that to you. Okay? So again, whether this is cursed from demons or whether it's synthetic, through electronic means, under the control of artificial intelligence, also known as the beast system. Jade Helm is under that, by the way. That in your adaptation to society, whether, regardless of the means, that we've allowed this to become our God. We've allowed this to become our government. We've allowed this to be something that keeps us in this direction of destruction. Now, I did the show the other night that didn't quite work out, and I was able to post my first show here when I went on MIXLR. And by the way, when MIXLR gets a couple more shows on it, it's called The Real, which is the archives. That'll start appearing, and where you'll be able to then come back to the archives. So once I get that set up, that'll be available. But my point in the last show was that what I was referring to, and I want to make a statement too, that I don't mean across the board when it comes to, quote, pastors. Now again, when you do a search, whether it's King James, whether it's Geneva Bible, anything that is closest to being more clean than any of these other translations, that you'll find pastors only mentioned once, and it's fourth in the line of prophets, teachers, evangelists, blah blah blah. And so how in the world did a single individual come from one term only mentioned once become on the throne in front of a congregation, acting like the Pope, giving the biblical interpretation of the Bible through his own means onto the people? This pyramid, this corporation, this capstone. But my point is that because they're in the matrix, because they've adapted to it, because they're not truly doing what God has intended them to do, that in the spirit realm, demons do not take them seriously. Do you understand that? You know, I mentioned all that because there was, you know, some terms brought to me that was nothing more than regurgitation of the seminaries to teach the pastors as they go into the churches this doctrine of men that have nothing to do with true spiritual warfare. We either know who we are or we don't. And if you don't know who you are and you don't know truth, then you'll receive these lies. You'll receive these doctrines of men. And it's nothing more than rhetoric. It has nothing to do with the truth. And if that's the way you think, if that's the way you operate, demons aren't going to take you serious because they already know they've got you, right? So what is the cause and effect of those things that have been implemented onto us? Well, the definition of a curse is something that continues to happen to you over and over and over again. Like a family that's continually alcoholic, a family that continually marries into abusive relationships, and early death, premature death, suicides, drug abuse, theft. These are curses. These were never things that God had for you. So they're the exact opposite at the spectrum. You know, you've got light over here and you've got dark over here, and in the middle somewhere is the average individual. But you have those that are way over to the dark. You know, their families are imploding. They're always in chaos. And it's amazing because people who were raised in that, they don't know anything different. And so they'll marry somebody like their father. They'll marry somebody like their mother because it's familiar, right? And if it's familiar, then you don't have to make a change. You don't have to adapt. You don't have to become something different than what you are. And unfortunately, then that keeps you in bondage because then you don't strive towards cleansing. Okay? Consecration. The term consecration meaning each day I get rid of the old man. Each day I get a demon out of me. Each day I get a curse broke off of me. Each day I have the acceptance of who I am and that I've got a job to do, and I better myself, finding myself approved before the Lord. Okay? You want to hear, well done, good and faithful servant. You don't want to hear, away from me, I did not know you. That's a terrible situation. Okay? So as time moves forth, as I take care of more things here and get more time to study, I'm going to try and do more shows. I want to help you identify the cause and effects. I want you to know what to do. I want you how to identify the real enemy. I want you to know how to identify God's enemy. Okay? They are wicked. God refers to them wicked, and he hates the wicked every day. Those who are liars, and I'm talking about habitual. Can you say Clintons? Those who are killers, those who are murderers, those who are deceivers. Who are they? What are they? And that's key, by the way. What are they? Are they human? Are they demonic? And by the way, when I do a deliverance and I get a full manifestation, it can be one of the questions that I ask. Are you human or are you demonic? And what I mean is that is it a demon that's manifested before me, or is it an alter, a multiple personality of that individual? And it's very important to know the difference, because if you have an alter or multiple that pops up and you think it's a demon and you start whacking on it, you're harming a human. You're harming the fragile will, spirit of the individual, their soul. You're actually causing more harm. So it's very important to know the difference. Okay? And of course, the most important part of this is, who are you? Who are you? Now, if you're listening to me, most likely you are human. Now, I know that there, with the way that Salt Lake City, with NSA, with the gang stalking, there are those who are laughing hyenas. There are those who are flying monkeys that listen to me so they can come out with disinformation to try and circumvent what I'm doing. Okay? So I want to help you define your role in these last days. Okay? But I also want to bring out the current events. I haven't had a chance to get back on things this weekend. When I say chill out, that means I'm just going to be doing researching, and I'll do some phone calls. I'll try and get back to your emails, but I'm basically done laboring here, so I'll be able to spend time. Now, let me address real quickly here the picture that was taken in Phoenix, Arizona, of this winged creature. All right. Now, there can be two things. I myself, being raised in Arizona, whenever there's a dust storm, whenever, now they call it a haboo. No, it's a dust storm. Whenever a dust storm comes along and you get a halo, you get a must, you get a death perception alter, meaning that because of the dust particles, your death perception is lost and the clarity is lost. And then maybe there's lights in the background because it's at dusk. Anytime you take a picture of a palm tree, anytime that you take a picture of any other structure, it literally can alter and change what gives the appearance, and especially the camera can be fooled. So I'm not going to tell you the picture is true, but when I first saw it, the first thing that came to mind was the Mothman. Now, the Mothman prophecies, the Mothman of the Ohio River when the bridge collapsed and all those people perished during Christmas time, the movie that was made out of that, wherever the Mothman appeared, then there was horrific curses that took place, horrific events. People died, horrible deaths. And so let's say that this creature, this being, is correct. It really is. One of the defining things I want to bring out is people are saying that it's a demon. Now, a demon is a spirit. It's a disembodied spirit. Now, a Nephilim or Nephilim is a fallen angel. So the term Nephilim, meaning the offspring, where the sons of God came into to the daughters of man, the offspring were also referred to as Nephilim. Okay. Now, when they died, because they were not of God, that their spirits, when they became disembodied, meaning the body died, the spirit was released. It was an abomination. It was not of God. And so God referred to them as evil spirits. That's where demons come from. So that's a demon. All right. So I would never call that a demon. Now, with the issue of CERN, with the breaching of the spirit realm, with the opening of the veil, that through the manifestation of the spirit coming into a physical form, that is a possibility. But that's not what I believe is taking, if the picture is true. What I would refer to say that in reality that it most likely is a fallen angel, or it's one of the entities that CERN has breached. Otherwise, the other dimensions that were holding these things captive. When we look in the book of Enoch, that the 200 that came into the daughters of men, that performed the abomination, that seeked being forgiven by God, using Enoch as the go-between, said that no, that's not going to take place. You were angelic. You saw what my environment, my kingdom, my world, and yet you still chose evil to come in and corrupt my creation. I will not forgive you. So they were damned, and they were imprisoned. They were encapsulated. When you have Hades, when you have Taurus, when you have these others, what referred to as hell, this encapsulation could very well have been in a dimension that CERN is opening up. Now, again, in my understanding of Jude, that when we see in Galatians or in Genesis 6, before and after the flood, that those after the flood that came into the daughters of men that left their own abode, that under the Euphrates River, I think, is where they're kept. That's my perception. Whether that's an actual fact, that's what I'm basing my understanding on. But in either case, the spirit realm is opening up. If these things are being let in, and if that picture is true, it's not a demon. Okay, it's either the entity that's been allowed in, or it is actually a Nephilim. Okay, all right. Now, also again defining that the Nephilim are also being referred to of the hybrids. Okay, anything that's an abomination, anything that was a corruption of what God originally created, that the DNA was altered, that I'll include hybrids, I'll include grays, reptilians, and even clones. Now, when I say clone, I'm not talking about taking Susie and getting her DNA and then mixing it into an egg and then reimplanting it in the ovary. I'm talking about laboratory intent to cause a creation that is used for their means of causing harm to men. Okay, so that is a conspiracy, by the way. So in this, again, with knowing who you are, I want to help you define your role for these last days. So when you look at these pictures, you'll know immediately. You'll say, "Oh, that's not a demon. That's a fallen angel. Oh, that's a reptilian. No, that's a clone." Okay, just take a look at Hillary's pictures. Okay, look at them over the past 1 year. All right, whether it's video, whether it's still photography, she looks different every time. So there are alters, there are clones, there are replicas of her that are impersonating her. All right. So again, this winged creature, whether it's real or not, still could be a possibility of an illusion because of the palm trees. And I know it's crazy, but I've seen that. Okay, I spent 47 years in Phoenix, and I know that environment, because of heat waves and whether the picture was just recently taken, of course it'd be cold in Phoenix, but whatever the circumstances are, I'm not just going to jump on it and say that it is a fact. Okay. So again, if you say that it's demons, you're incorrect. I'm sorry. Okay. So there's a clear line being drawn in the sand right now. As I exit out of this, I want you to understand that this nation is being separated. Okay, we have conservative, we have liberal, we have whatever you want to say. This last election was a definition of that. This was probably one of the most defining that I had ever seen. Okay, just like the Civil War, the nation was divided, and you saw how bloody that was. History repeats itself. But, however, we need to understand that in any chaos where martial law is brought in because of the civil war that takes place, that in this time, this is not going to be, one state against another, one city against another, a liberal against a conservative, a father against a son. This is literally going to be foreign troops, mercenaries, those from China, those from Russia, those who are of also the so-called United Nations coming here to implement martial law. Okay? So while our troops are being deployed in other countries and being basically used to the point of exhaustion, mental exhaustion, 25 taking their life each day, this all, by the way, is under the adaptation of the matrix, that each individual that had joined the military, that had been beat into the ground, emotionally their spirits were broken, and now they're committing suicide. They've adapted to the matrix, which did not have their best interest in mind, and so now they are literally victimized by that. So let's say that Trump does make it into the White House, okay? All right. Will he stop what's coming? Will he actually be the one to say that he sees that this is a forced civil war amongst us, a segregation, a division? Is he going to stop it? Well, I'm sorry. He's a Knights Templar. He's of the New World Order. He may be out of the Vatican side. And so my answer is no. I'm sorry. I believe that he is a reptilian. I believe that he is of the seed of Satan. I know that those would love to believe in him, and I wish it were true. I wish he was the man. But I am not going to adapt. I am not going to conform. I'm not going to take reality because of the facts that I see before me every day, and I'm not going to submit to the matrix. I'm not going to be a part of it. I have to call things as I see them. So I'm saying that Trump is actually still going to continue to be a part of the problem. So with this adaptation, the conservative thinking of those who believe that he's going to be the savior, I get that. But just understand that while after all of these presidents, after 40 some odd of them, and after all the thousands of years that the New World Order, the Illuminati, those that are of the occult of Luciferian doctrine, why are they going to let one man stand in the way of all their work? It's not going to happen, okay? So there you go. All right. So this matrix that we're literally in, is its full plan is going to keep us in this deception. In this deception that we're thinking that things are going to be okay. Now, let me address this. How many have been married a couple times? How many of you went into a marriage thinking that that was the answer? You thought that was going to be okay. And then the next thing you find out, as soon as the honeymoon's over, as soon as the sex goes away or whatever the situation is, then you find out that this is not the individual that you thought it was. Okay? Now it turns into spousal abuse, turns into lies. The perpetrator that you married, and maybe some of you are actually the perpetrator, that you, in your lies and your deception, are literally being blamed or blaming the other, okay, for what's wrong in the marriage, okay? When in fact, it is a projection of the very evil that is within them is part of the controlling. This is how Jezebels work. This is how narcissists work. This is how with people with social disorders, those that are sociopaths, those who are psychopaths. Again, the lamp lighting, right? Okay, evil does what evil is. Liars, deceivers. And so no truth, no good is found in them. Okay? So why go along with it? Okay, handlers, let's say, for instance, of those people who are SRAs, satanically ritually abused, again, with the Montauk Project towards the end, I think I pretty well cleared that out, that the handlers themselves can come in as the good cop, bad cop. Okay, so the abusers were the bad cop, and now the handler comes in, and they're the good cop. They're the ones who seem to be the savior. They're the ones in the knight in shining armor that comes to their rescue. And now the person's fractured, and only their perception of those who are kind to them, that they submit themselves to them. And this is why they become their handlers. And so this bond that takes place is a demonic soul tie. And that demonic soul tie is very, very controlling. And any time that you have that kind of control, it is always, always based in witchcraft. Okay? So the same thing, the deception that we've got a savior coming is nothing more than a handler. Do you see that? We just had bad cop. Now we got good cop. Nothing different. Nothing has changed. All right? When in fact, they are destroyers. Adaptation has its place. All right? When you come into a work environment, you have to adapt to it in order to keep the job. All right? As long as it's, peaceful. But just understand that in this, you are being in bondage. And bondage does not have your best interest in mind. Okay? So enable for you to have a understanding, a discernment of what's right and wrong, you first must know the difference of right and wrong. What is defined? What does God say? God is the defined definition. He's the cornerstone, right? Christ is the cornerstone, not a Luciferian deception. Because anything other than the truth is a lie. And so as I move forward, as I get all this out, I want to help define that a little more and get back onto what's going on. I want to get caught back up on CERN. I want to get caught back on psychotronics, get back on this and get you up to date, because there is going to be an acceleration here. I talked to some people today that were over in California over the holidays, and wow, boy, I tell you, if you live in California, God bless you. I would not want to be there, because that spirit, the spirits that have taken over California, they're very powerful. And the deception that has taken place is eventually, if you take heat away, the world, the heavens, the aerial, the expanse, whenever you take heat away, like you take the sun away, it the absence of heat, then things simply go back to their normal state, which is absolute cold. You get down into a Kelvin. You get down into, like liquid nitrogen or liquid helium. And it's only because you've taken away heat. So whenever you take away truth, then you have the frozen environment of deception. Okay? Well, as I close out here, if you haven't heard back from me, I had a computer crash yesterday. I came in, turned it on, and I didn't have anything. So I spent several hours finally getting that straightened out, and I may have lost some things. If you were waiting from a call, then I had you on a list that was in my computer, and you're not there anymore. I've been under such duress of getting things going, I don't remember everything right now. So if I didn't call you back, if I missed your emails or whatever it is, please email me again or call me again so I can get you back on the list and answer you. So I apologize. Again, the way that things, in fact, with everything that I had to move over in reality, it wasn't as bad as it could have been. There's just going to be opposition. And so thank you, Jesus, for hanging in there. So again, for those who are out there that are in the occult, that may be trying to seek the truth, and some of you are TIs, some of you, are constantly being gang stalked, some of you are under curses. We're all in this together because we are the separation. When that line's drawn, we're on one side of the fence. We want to be on the side of God. We want to be on the side of truth. And so regardless of our differences in theology, regardless of how we've been brought up and our personalities, we're all in this together because evil wishes to destroy all of us. And in that destruction, then they gain what they're seeking, and that is absolute control and the satisfaction that they won against God. Well, that's not going to happen, but unfortunately, there is only going to be a remnant few. Now, that can even be debated. There's so much here that I'm going to be researching. Put it this way, ladies and gentlemen, I'm hitting the reset button. Everything that I had read, everything that I had learned, the only thing that I'm going to base on things right now is what I have seen over the past 17 years that I've been doing deliverance. And that is the fact, what has brought healing? What has brought salvation? What has brought truth? What has brought someone out from under oppression? What has healed them? What has brought them to a point that they're now wanting to live instead of wanting to kill themselves? So whether there's been an alteration in Scripture, whether we've had some of the key books taken away from us, whether the Mandela effect is affecting us now to the point that we can't even read our own Bibles and know the truth anymore, I want to base everything on the past 17 years. And I say that as a baseline because if I had been wrong, if these things had not been truth, then there wouldn't have been victory. There wouldn't have been salvation. There wouldn't have been healing. There wouldn't have been cancers removed. There wouldn't have been sicknesses and mental illnesses, cut out of people. People have been set free. And so I have to base it on that because Jesus said, you shall know them by their fruits. And so I have to base it on that, and that's what I want to do. So I'm just going to hit the reset button. So there's going to be a lot of things here that I may have held as a fact. I'm going to be questioning that, and I'm sorry, but you know what? If I've been lied and deceived, then I'm not going to be a fool and continue the lie. As I move forth and as I get things hopefully in order, then I want to pass them on to you. And with you being healed, with you being set free, with you having the ability of discerning from right and wrong per God's word, then you can make your own decision. I'm not here to influence you. I'm here to give the options to make the choices. All right? All right. Well, God bless. Again, this is one of the first times out of the chute for simulcasting, so hopefully I've got it. God bless.
You're listening to the all-new KBLU Radio Network. That's the Blue Raven Network. Often duplicated, but never replicated. You're listening to the all-new KBLU Radio Network. That's the Blue Raven Network.
Often duplicated, never replicated. You're listening to the all-new KBLU Radio Network, Blue Raven Network.